Good day, everyone. Today we're diving into the fundamental rules for operations on integers, specifically focusing on addition and subtraction. Before we start operating, let's clearly define what an integer is. Now, integers are a set of numbers that include all counting numbers. That includes their negative counterparts as well as the number 0. Now, looking at the chart here, the integers include obviously the number 0 and the counting numbers, or it's also known as positive numbers like 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then you also have the negative numbers like -1, -2, -3, -4, etc. Now, it's also important to keep in mind that what is not an integer and non-integers. So this would include like fractions like a half, 1/3, like technically fractions, decimals like 0.25 and 0.18, so pretty much decimals like those, and any irrational numbers, so like the pi, which comes also in a form of decimal, which is 3.14, etc. Now we're going to have rules on addition of integers. Now, if we look at the first rule, it's usually when the signs are the same. For example, a positive plus a positive or a negative plus a negative. So to be able to solve any of these rules, or pretty much any equation that follows under this rule, we'll need to add their absolute values and then keep the common sign. So let's look at some of the examples on this slide. So if we have 5 plus 8 gives us a positive, which is both positive numbers, and when we add these two numbers together we get a positive 13, and we keep the positive sign since the answer is positive 13. Now, if we look at the next one, which is -2 plus -15, which are both negative, we add the 2 and the 15 in order to get to 17, and we also keep the common negative sign, which is a negative, or which has already been said, it's negative, and so the answer is -17. We're going to look at the next sign, or the next rule. Now, the next rule is pretty much when the signs are pretty much different. So our second rule is when the signs are different and it comes in various forms. And it's nothing to worry about, you'll get the hang of it. So it's when a positive plus a negative or a negative plus a positive. So in this case, we subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger one, and then we keep the same sign of the number with the greater absolute value. So let's look at the examples that are on here. So we have positive 8 plus a -5. Now, when you look at those two numbers, they have different signs. So the greater value in this equation is obviously 8. We subtract the 5 from the 8 to get to 3. And since the 8 is bigger, it's also the sign that we're going to go with, and it's positive. So we use the positive sign. So the answer should be positive 3. Now if we go on to the next equation, it's -9 plus -4. And obviously, as you can see here, the signs are different, and the greater absolute value is 9. And the sign that comes with it is negative. So what we do here is we're going to subtract 9 and 4 to get to the answer, which is 5. Since obviously the 9 is negative, we keep the negative number, or negative sign, sorry. So we keep the negative sign. The answer we come with, negative 9 plus negative 4, positive 4 gets you to negative 5. So negative 9 plus 4 equals negative 5. We're going to move on to now the rules of subtraction of integers. So the key rule here is that when it comes to subtracting, we actually need to change the problem into addition problems, then follow the rules that we have changed, that we have learned. So pretty much, in a way to remember is to subtract integers, we have to change the sign of the second number and follow the addition rule. So what we do is, this is also known as key change rule. And here's are like the dot points or the steps that you could follow to keep in mind on how to do it. So first, keep the first number exactly as it is. The second one, or the second step that you will follow, is change the subtraction sign into an addition sign. Third, change the sign of the second number to its opposite. And finally, you can follow the rules in additioning which is from the addition integers for adding integers. Now, here are some examples of how to do the keep change rule. And remember, to subtract integers, we change the sign of the second number and follow the rule for addition. So if we look at the example on the left here, so we keep the 7, so that does not change, so that stays the same. So as you can see in the second step, that stays the same, right? So when it comes to following the rule, you have to change the subtraction sign to a positive sign. So that means it's pretty much making that positive, right? And then you change the positive 3 to a negative 3 because you're making it opposite, right? So that would be the rule. So the problem now becomes 7 plus negative 3. And then you just have to solve the problem. So remember that the rule that we did for integers, or the addition of integers, is that you pretty much subtract the values. So remember that the problem is 7 plus negative 3. Since the signs are different, we subtract the absolute values. So we do is, to make it a bit easier, it's 7 take away 3, which gets you to 4. Which is, since the 7 is larger and its sign is positive, it's always there but you can't see it, is that it's always positive. Unless if there's a negative sign before that, we keep it as a positive. So the answer would be positive 4. Now let's go to the next one. So we keep the 5, that remains the same. And then we go on to the subtraction sign and we change it to a positive sign. And remember, you change the negative 2 to a positive 2. So what your equation should look like is negative 5 plus 2. And since the plus would look weird, that's why we put brackets on the plus 2. So when we come to the equation of this, when we come to solve this, since the problem is -5 plus 2, since the sign's different, we have to think about the rules, or what we learned from the first two rules when it comes to the addition of integers. We have to subtract the absolute values. Now, when we say absolute values, that means just the signs, or just the two numbers without the equations, because that could get a little hard. So that means 5 take away 2 gets you to 3. And then this is where you this is where you put the signs in. So remember that the 5 is bigger and it came with a negative. So we attach the negative to it. And that's how you solve these kind of equations. So that concludes our presentation on addition and subtraction of integers. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.